So my personal history starts in Guatemala. I was born in the eastern part of the country under extremely poor conditions. We moved to the northern rainforest, and living in the rainforest, I was exposed to a lot of nature, and that exposure to nature and under the conditions we lived in forced us to look at things very differently. Survival, living in hunger and poverty, and really trying to figure out a way to get out of that, yet doing it responsibly. For us, it was critical. Ethics were high in our list. The principles that we operated by, that we lived by, were very strong. And so my father was a critical guide, provided critical guidance in that process. So my life evolved around that rainforest, poverty, malnutrition, that guidance that my father provided, and in doing so, I became really enamored with food and agriculture, but a different kind, not the exploitative, degenerative kind of monocultures that we practice around the world and has pretty much taken over the world. This was a different way of thinking about that. So my history evolved out of that. I went to agriculture school. I really wanted to learn the science behind everything we did, but I had a little bit of a different purpose for learning that. I didn't care about growing corn and soybeans or going and applying chemicals in the land. We had learned early on in our lives and through my parents' guidance that was really wrong, and wrong in so many different ways for our health, for the health of the ecology, even economically. You became dependent on other people's products, and every time you went back to the chemical store, they got more expensive, whether it was seeds or other kinds of inputs like fertilizers or herbicides or pesticides. It looked like slavery to us, and it was explained to us that way. So by the time I made it to ag school, I was no longer interested in that, but I was interested in the science, the biochemistry, the physical processes that make energy transformation possible. And so my history, my whole background with regenerative agriculture comes out of that way deeper understanding of how these systems around us actually work to turn inert energy that is sitting out there in the air and in the soil into edible things, but doing so in a way that we don't pollute our bodies or we don't destroy the very ecology that makes that transformation of energy possible. So in the process of that energy sort of world that we live in, where energy goes and comes and circulates around us and all of that, and in the process it generates food that we use to sustain our bodies and to feed our spirit and to support our neighbors and so on and so forth. I came into this idea with friends and with requests from a lot of professionals that I work with that I should write a book about that story. And so the way I went about writing that book, and it was to recreate that life experience with green men in the center of it as my sort of spiritual guide or my alter ego, if you want to call it that. But why is that important at this point? I mean, why write a book about all of those things? We all have stories like that, and we could all probably write a book about green men, all that. But why was that important? Well, there are a couple of things. One, starting with the ecological destruction that agriculture has brought to us, degenerative agriculture practices have brought to our world. It is important that we go back to some of those original methods and systems that evolved over time, and some of them ancient, that were really assuring that we would have food for a long time, which we gave up for the convenience of conventional agriculture. So at this point in time, we have to start rethinking how we grow food. We have to go into a regenerative process where we think about those energy cycles again. And so to start that process, for me, it was important to first understand the spiritual grounding that you need in order to depart into this new quest for regenerative agriculture. So the book, in short, what the book does is grounds the principles and the spirituality and the reasoning and so on behind why we cannot expect solutions out of the same system that created the problems we have today. And so today we're missing a lot of that ancient knowledge about that practical application of that intelligence, that innate intelligence that we were born gifted with, And so it is more relevant today that we start creating a space so that we can regenerate our ability to even tell our own stories and to regain that knowledge. So, to put it in other words, we have to reinvent the way we do a lot of things, especially how we grow our food. And it hasn't been more relevant, probably in the whole history of mankind, more relevant than it is today. We have almost destroyed the ecology that pretty much secured that we would have food forever. We have slaved whole populations to produce the food by offering their cheap labor and by creating conditions that lock them into systems that are degenerative to their own living, to their own lives. And then we have also created this economic flow that makes a few very rich at the expense of the rest of us. We have to re-engineer how we go about practicing agriculture so that it doesn't do any of those three things. It doesn't destroy our ecology, doesn't create economies of exploitation, and especially brings us back together as people. That's what we call the triple bottom line. And so this is today, designing systems that achieve that triple bottom line is more relevant probably than in our whole history. It's imperative that we start thinking this way.